Here are your video notes for lesson 4.1, but we are starting a new chapter, so make sure you're starting a new page of notes. This is now chapter 4, and lesson 4.1 is about writing equations in slope, intercept form. And some of this will look like stuff that we've done before because you've worked with slope-intercept form, but before you were starting with the equations and building a graph with them. Now you're going to be starting with other information, and you're going to be ending up with an equation that will be written in slope-intercept form. As a reminder, let's put what is slope-intercept form right here. There's slope-intercept form. M is the slope, and B is the y-intercept. Book will start you off with something that I think will be pretty easy. An example of a few of the problems that you'll do. They'll tell you that the slope is going to be something. For example, they'll say the slope is negative 2/3 and that the y-intercept is 4. And then you will be required to write that equation, and it'll be as simple as saying, hey, I know y is going to equal something times x plus something else. And you just have to know the slope is what will end up going right here next to the x, and you'll have y equals negative 2/3 x. Your y-intercept is what will go back here, and that would be your answer. So you're ending up with an equation in slope-intercept form. Let me move forward to new page, example 2. Draw as good a graph as you can on your notebook paper for your notes, but instead of starting with just the slope and y-intercept, they might start you with a line, and if they give you a line, they will tell you 2 points on the line. And if I told you that this is -1, this is -2, and then said this is 1, this is 2, from here we would work to end up finding out the slope and the y-intercept, because to get our equation for this, we still simply have to come up with what's our slope and what's our y-intercept. If we look, the first thing that's easiest to pick out will be the y-intercept, which is this point right here. So our y-intercept is -2. To get our slope, we are actually going to have to remember that slope is equal to rise over run. And from the 2 points that you would see, say here and here, you would build a rise. How much are you going up when you go over how far? And this one happens to rise 2 when it runs 2. So you get a slope of 2/2, which would equal 1. And we would put the 1 in for x. The only thing is that equation, more simply written, would be that y equals 1 times x is just x, and adding a -2 is the same thing as subtracting 2, so that equation would probably get simplified to that form. A third example of other information you might get 2 coordinate points. And if we use the point 3, -10, and another coordinate point of 0 and 2, we don't want to have to graph this to figure out information about it. We do know an equation that we could work with to find the slope, because in the end, what do we still need? We need to put in a slope there, and we need to put in a y-intercept there. So to find the slope, a reminder from last chapter, we have that m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So if we pick out our y values, here's a y value, here's a y value, we'll call this one y2, we'll call this y1. We are going to put in y2 as 2 and take away from it y1, which is -10. That's on top, and our x value subtracted. If we call this y2, we have to call this x2. So that has to be our first number. So we're going to put 0 in there, and we're going to take the y1 value of 3 and substitute the 3 in here and subtract it. If we do the math with that, it's easiest to get the right answer if you'll change subtracting to adding the opposite. We end up with 12 for the top, and on the bottom we get 0 minus 3, which is negative 3, and that would give us a negative 4 for the slope, so we'll throw the negative 4 in here. The only other thing we need is the y-intercept, and right now this is going to be a little simpler than what we will be doing in the next lesson, but out of the 2 points you have, the y-intercept is hidden, and if you know what to look for, it's not hidden very well. If you think about plotting the point 3, negative 10, ask yourself, would that be on the y-intercept? I hope you guys realize that from the origin you're going to move over 1 and up 3, so it will not be on the y-intercept. If we looked at this point, when you have a 0 right there and a 2 there, this 0 is going to say don't move left or right, just go up the 2 and you will still be on the y-intercept. This actually is your y-intercept because of that 0 out front. So we are going to have a y-intercept of 2, and on this one we have the equation done now. If we go to one last example here yet, example 4, at the end of the last chapter we worked with function notation. Some of the problems that you will be doing tomorrow for the assignment will be written in function notation, where you have f of 0 equals 6 and f of 2 equals 4. And what you would need to remember is that the f of 0 part, don't write down what I'm going to put here in red, but this part right here really just replaced y, and that says y equals 6. So the 6 really is a y value right now. Let me get rid of some of that writing. I just went one too far back. There we go. So we know that a y value is 6. That happens when the x value is, and this 0 replaced the x value. So this is really what x is. X is 0. In other words, and you can write down now what I'm putting in red, this is the coordinate point 0, 6. This is the coordinate point 2, 4. And if you're having trouble following how I'm picking that out as two coordinate points, have me explain it to you again tomorrow in class while you're working. But at this point on example 4, finishing this up will be just like what you did in example 3. Would you pause the video, please, and come up with what is your equation for slope-intercept form of the line that goes through the point 0, 6 and also goes through the point 2, 4. Alright, I will now show you what you should have gotten for the result. If we take our y values and subtract them, we are looking at having 4 minus 6. And then I'm going to take the 2 and I'm going to subtract from it 0. That enables me to find my slope as negative 2 over 2, which would equal negative 1. And as I examine these 2 points, one of those 2 points I should recognize now actually is the y-intercept, and that is the y-intercept because if I did graph it, the point 1, 6 would be right there. Okay? And it's this point, so that's my y-intercept of 6. I know my slope is negative 1, so when I write the equation, I get y equals negative 1 times x plus 6, which will probably be more simply written as y equals a negative x plus 6. And that concludes your video notes for today then.